what we need to do to craft very precise, clear, and researchable questions. Now, a hypothesis is the answer to that question. So it's a statement that needs to be proved or disproved. Now, just as we have ways of crafting questions so that they will be precise and clear, we also have a way of crafting hypotheses. And the first thing you know about hypothesis, it is that it is an intelligent guess. It is an informed guess regarding what should happen given certain conditions. Now, we say educated or intelligent guess. You know, somebody was asking, after constructing all of these things, what if it turns out to be futile? A lot of resources would have been wasted. And I said it can't happen because you are not going to construct your hypothesis after taking a bottle of whiskey. If anything at all, you construct your hypothesis after drinking from the literature. So you will be very sober and you have a lot of ideas in your head. And you reflect through those ideas. And therefore, it takes some time to begin to write a good hypothesis. And there are certain features that you find that will constitute or make you write or make your hypothesis very clear, concise, and meaningful. Because that's actually the point. I was reviewing a write-up recently, and the gentleman was working on synergetic conditions that will enable the civilian joint task force to be very effective in working with the security forces in order to deal with the counter-terrorism situation in Nigeria. And he did all kinds of operations, including regression, and then at the end of the day, he reached some conclusions. And I looked at the paper again and again, and I saw that there was a difference between the conclusion he has given and the objective that he started with. And then on reflecting on it, I asked myself, what were you testing when you were doing regression and you were doing chi-square? And I stated clearly that if he had had an hypothesis, then there would be no disconnect between the objective and the conclusions. Because the hypothesis would have evolved from the research questions, and it would have tested those hypotheses and derived conclusions. So what I'm saying in essence is that I then asked the question, how are we sure that the entire operation that he has carried out in that research is even necessary for the objectives to be achieved? So that's how important a hypothesis is, because you move from the research questions and you translate it into a hypothesis that you need to work. And hypotheses, of course, play a very vital role, as you see, from research, especially causal research. And there are certain elements. The first, of course, is that your hypothesis must be clear. It must be a very clear construct. You can't write a hypothesis and we are not sure what you are talking about. Now we'll go on to look at different ways of presenting hypothesis. One of the things you also try to ensure that is in your hypothesis is that the variables are clear. And we can see from your hypothesis the relationship between one variable and the other and the connection between the variables. And the direction is also very clear. The direction between the variables are very clear. Now, if the hypothesis is disconnected from your research question or the problem of the research, then of course it becomes a problem. It means that even the function that hypothesis is supposed to do, it cannot do. Because it's supposed to help establish the answer to the question. Now, if it is disconnected from your question, then it's not speaking, it can't be an answer, a possible answer to that question. Meanwhile, we say a hypothesis is an intelligent guess. It's supposed to answer to the research question. Now, if it is disconnected from that research question, now it looks very simple. You wonder, how can a hypothesis not speak to the research question? Now, we can take samples of proposal that we have seen. You'll find that it's actually one of the commonest things you encounter when you are dealing with research. Because that consistency appears easy, but in concrete terms, it is not. And we'll also see why it has to be, because there's a logic that drives what we do, and we'll come to that very soon. But sometimes we are not disciplined enough to focus on that connection. So we think we are supposed to write a hypothesis, then we write one. Now, from the hypothesis, you can determine whether your research question or the focus of your study is on causality or it is descriptive. We have tried to see that when we come to the research question. In other words, your research question cannot be causal and your hypothesis descriptive. And your research question cannot be descriptive, and then you have a causal hypothesis. There must be consistency. In other words, you are perpetually reflecting on what your questions are and what your hypotheses are, and what is the connection between them. If it's causal, then there must be an independent variable and a dependent variable. It must express a cause-effect relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable. Now, when you look at the way we have approached those questions, you'll find that from each of those questions that we have described as causal, we can identify not only the causal factor, but also the outcome factor, but much more than that, the connection between them. That is the causal mechanism. Now, do we need a hypothesis for all research projects?
No, it's not all researches that lend themselves to hypothesis.
Why?
Because if the research is descriptive, you are dealing with only one concept. You are not trying to compare cause and effect or any either outcome and cause and outcome.
Is it possible to have a descriptive research with a hypothesis?
Yes. No.
Yes.
Yes. No. Yes. No.
Is it possible to have
A descriptive research with a hypothesis?
No.
yes?
I say no. Yes.
Why do you say no?
I say no because a descriptive research is describing an event, just one event. It could be you, an individual, it could be a situation, it could be any, but it's dealing with only that. From what you have told us here, you said there must be a relationship and the relationship must be clear. So if you're looking at two items and then there's a relationship, there's a hypothesis. But if it is one, yes, sir.
Is the relationship between variables always causal? Can there be a relationship that is non-causal?
Yes. There can be influence.
always pay attention to the question, can there be a relationship that is non-causal?
Yes.
So does that make it possible to have a hypothesis that is non-causal?
Yeah, it's possible, but then the research is not
The
descriptive.
question you asked now is a little, I'm still trying to bite down into that. What does that mean?
Is it possible to have a relationship between two variables that is non-causal?
So in the case of a correlational relationship.
Relational study, a causal relationship.
No. No.
Now, is it possible to have a hypothesis for a correlational study?
Yes.
So does that tell us, therefore, that it is possible to have a non-causal hypothesis?
Yes.
Yes.
So we have come to that point.
Yeah, but it's not descriptive.
But ideally,
You see,
Not descriptive.
what you are, there is a,
I'm also.
but it's a very important question.
Yes.
Now, is a correlation a description or not? You know, you are taking us back to elementary statistics. So when we say descriptive statistics or inferential statistics, what do we include and what do we exclude?
What I am saying is that we come here with a lot of prior knowledge. Can we allow ourselves to relearn, to unlearn and relearn, so that we are able to move?
Do you want to say something here? I'll come back to that.
All these debates
Yes.
about whether if you have a hypothesis, you have to use quantitative means to evaluate and to test and so on and so forth. And when we are doing a qualitative research, you do not apply instruments of statistics and so on, and therefore you are not testing. I think that is the argument that is trying to develop.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. You want to make one more comment?
What I actually want to say is for the fact that hypothesis is a guess question, what I came here with is that whether intelligent guess, whatever research you're doing, there must be a guess. You must, whether there must be a guess question. You must, whatever you want to do, whether you wrote it down or you have it in your head. I think that's what it has. And it may have the framing, but there must be a guess question you are trying.
The simple question that Susan has put before us is that if an educated guess to your research question looks like what you call preposition, would you accept that that is a hypothesis?
Yes.
Thank you. That's what it is.
But
Now,
I don't have a table, a statistical way.
you don't have to. You don't have to have a table. You don't have to have a statistical analysis of it. What is important is that you have a tentative guess about what you are looking for. Now, you also know that some hypotheses have to be modified as you proceed with your research work, because the first statement of it may not be clear enough. You understand? So when you look at all of those things, don't have a static disposition to them. Because you also, as you know, we refine. As we read the literature, we refine. As we organize the research activities and carry them, we refine. You understand? Because we have to be as clear and as precise as possible. That's what makes hypotheses very important. Now, because they connect one variable to another, they tell us how they relate. Because that's what we're actually trying to find out when we proceed in any form of inquiry. And we need to have that. Really, if you don't have a hypothesis, sometimes your research can be unwieldy. And that's when you fall into the error of not seeing the logic that runs through the entire research process. Always remember that we said the research process is typically supposed to be seamless. And so the research question connects with the hypothesis, and the hypothesis drives the research question in such a way that the method will enable you to fulfill the answer to those. Now, connection among the different research work that you are reading. Because it is through reflection that you are able to do that, and then therefore your hypothesis now evolve from what you are thinking, what you are imagining, what you think should be explained. And once you begin to move in that direction of identifying something, in other words, that needs to be explained, and you have crafted a question that seeks an answer, then of course they have an issue.